There we go. All right. Terrific. It looks like we have some folks joining us, which is awesome. I am going to make sure that we are recording. I believe we are, but I just want to double check. Make sure that this is available once we're finished as well.
Hi, everyone. I know we were a little bit late. We just had another amazing training prior to this on engineering students. So if any of you want to check that out as well, we'll have it on our YouTube soon.
Terrific. All right. And it looks like we are recording, which is awesome. So, first of all, I see that we've got quite a few people here. So if you want to put in the chat maybe your graduation year, if you feel comfortable. If not, that's okay too, but just to get an idea of who we've got with us here today. And feel free to utilize the chat or the question and answer portion if you have any question and answer related things, and then we will make sure to address those as we go through the presentation. All right, so we've got a 2026 upcoming senior. That's wonderful. Parent of the class of 2027. Another 2026 parent. That's wonderful. So welcome everyone. This training will be hopefully good for people in any year, but especially the upcoming seniors, the class of 2026. And I say upcoming, but many of you might have started school already. So if that's the case, I hope the semester is going well for you so far. I am going to share my screen here. Just give me 1 second. This is what I want.
Nice. 2026 so far. Looks like it's the most people. We got some 2026, 2027. All right.
Awesome. Okay. So, are we all good to see the screen?
Yes.
Terrific. All right. So we can get started here, and I'm just going to pull that up. Awesome. So this presentation is on specifically for first generation college students. So it's all about what you need to know throughout the college application process. Oops.
All right, so a little bit of what we'll cover today in the agenda is we'll first do a quick introduction. Then we're going to cover the college application landscape, application components, what type of colleges, because there's there's a lot of different types of colleges, and a lot of people don't know that. We're going to be helping you build a college list, give you key dates and application plans. We're also going to give you some tips on how to organize yourself, how to track all of your progress in the college application cycle. We're also going to give you some resources and end it with some support systems. And we didn't add it on here, but we'll also have some question time at the end. So for closing, that's going to be replaced with questions, but feel free to ask any questions on the Q&A as well if while we're going over, and then at the end we'll answer those questions.
Terrific. Okay. And I'm sure you're wondering who you're talking to right now. So we would love to introduce ourselves. I'm Coach Kristen. This is me on the right-hand side. And I felt really excited about doing this style of a presentation with this topic because I am actually a first-generation college student myself. And so I think this is a very important topic to talk about just because I remember as I was going through the application process, I really had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to even apply for colleges. I had to get a lot of assistance from my friends who were also going for it for the first time. So it was just very confusing. And I ended up in an okay spot. I mean, I went to a place that I had never visited before and it turned out okay, but I would love to help be a resource for anybody else who might be feeling that same sort of confusion without this or with this process because it is very complex and long and all that other stuff. So that's who I am, Coach Kristen, and then I will turn it over to Coach Dolly here.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Coach Dolly, and similar to Kristen, I am also a first-generation college student. Funny story, I didn't even know I knew what first gen was, but I didn't have, so my little story is my mom did attend community college. So for the longest time, I didn't think I qualified as first gen. But until my senior year of college, so late already on, I realized like, oh no, this implies if your parents graduated from like a 4-year university. So this whole time I didn't consider myself a first gen student. I wasn't sure how it all worked out, what was a first gen student, what wasn't. So I definitely missed out on a lot of opportunities or resources that I could have reached out to. I knew, first gen and I knew what it was, but in reality, I really didn't. So I'm here also to help out and students navigate that and just really let you know that you are not alone and we have a lot of great resources out there. And it is a challenging process, right? There's a lot of steps into it, but hopefully from today's webinar, you'll go ahead and learn a couple steps of what to do next, how to, if you're on the right track, and of course, don't be afraid to ask any questions for us during this webinar.
Terrific. Okay, so um, the first thing I wanted to go over is just kind of a landscape. So what the college application landscape looks like, and this is a very high level overview. So the first thing that you're going to want to do when you're applying to colleges is develop a list. And we'll talk more about this later, about the process of developing a college list and things that go into that. So first step is just figuring out where you want to apply. The next step is going to be writing the essays. So there's a few different types of essays within the college application process, and we'll also talk about those a little bit more later, but the essays are really an important part of the process because the essays are really to let the college admissions officers know who you are as a person. So they're getting your application, they're getting your transcripts, they know your activities from your list, but they don't really know much about you and who you are. So the essays are your opportunity to really go into your personality, what your motivations are, and all that good stuff. So essays are a really big part. And then the next step is going to be filling out the application itself. So this is entering your grades, your classes, everything like that. So the kind of nitty-gritty of the application, I like to call it. And then the last step is going to be submitting the application. And so with these, there are each application does it a little bit differently, but so a lot of them have a cost associated with that application. A lot of them have letters of recommendation that are required and things like that. So those are going to be the important things to look out for as you submit. So I'll hand it over to Coach Dolly for our next slide to talk a little bit more.
Thank you. All right, next slide. So for the different types of applications, applying to college, you can use a lot of different types of applications. The most common one, it's in the name, common application, the Common App. And this one does give you a limit of only 20 schools. So if you are thinking of applying to more than 20 schools, you really want to stay focused and narrow down your the college list, which we'll talk about later on. So the Common App, this is going to include a lot of universities, privates, and across from the different states. But the main thing here is schools are going to require a supplemental essay in addition to your personal statement essay. So if you know that for a Common App, you need to write a personal statement, do keep in mind that there are schools in the Common App that are going to have an additional section to it where you will talk about supplemental essays. And these supplemental essays tend to be shorter. It's not going to be the same, where the personal statement is 650 words. The supplementals are between 200 or so words. And that's one thing you want to take in mind, right? Recognize that there are additional essays, so you can prep and be prepared for those additional supplemental essays. For the UC application, this one is specifically just for the UCs. So any students interested in applying to UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, all of the UCs, that one's going to be separate. And just note, that's not going to count in your Common App, right? So if you want to apply to 5 UCs, it's not going to go into those, you're not going to have 15 slots now, no. So that's a completely different portal, and which is another important thing. When you're creating your portals, you want to make sure you have a document where you've kept all of your logins, your passwords. Make sure you're using an email that's not funky, like too cool for you at gmail.com. Just make sure it's something professional and you're keeping track of all of your logins. So for the UC applications, this one, the only thing that is required are going to be your PIQs, which means this is the personal insight questions, similar to the personal statement for the Common App, but you are going to answer 4 prompts on there. Okay, the third one, this one is a collation app. This one doesn't have a limit. It does have less partnerships than the Common App. So if you're in between those applications, I would definitely recommend the Common App. It's a little bit more well-known. It does have a lot more universities on there. And this is a college app that supports a lot of first-gen students, low-income students, and underrepresented students. So just to know that there are other applications out there as well. And this one also, in addition, we didn't add it on here, but there are individual school applications. So there are some schools that if you don't find it on the Common App, on the Coalition app, they are going to have their own individual portals. So you just want to make sure when you're creating your college list, you know where you'll be applying individually for each university. Okay, for Texas Apply, similar to UC's, where that one is just for the UC's, Texas Apply is specifically for schools in the state of Texas. So that's something else that you can create as well, a Texas portal. If you know you'll be applying to various universities in Texas, maybe you can leave some space from your Common App schools and just dedicate a whole portal for Texas applications. And one thing to note for the Texas application, it's similar to Common App where it's one singular application and it's just specifically for Texas institutions. Okay, the last one here is QuestBridge, and this is a program that connects high achieving students that come from maybe a low income high school or low income background. And this QuestBridge application is going to it can grant students with full scholarships to top colleges and universities. It's a free application, which helps um, it helps them apply to multiple QuestBridge partner colleges. So the colleges do have to have a partnership with QuestBridge in order for it to apply. So it's not like Common App where you can apply to any schools you want. There, the partnership has to be made between the university and QuestBridge. And yeah, those are the different applications that there are. So I know there's so many applications, but we, of course, within our program, we help you, we guide you through to see which one is the best route for you. And like every application, it has its challenges, but we're here to help you and of course guide you through the different types of applications that there are. Okay.
Awesome. And just one thing to add to, so the reason that the Coalition app is more geared toward first generation, low income, and underrepresented students is that it really focuses on providing resources and access to colleges that are committed to supporting these student populations. So a lot of the partnerships that are on the Coalition app are actually colleges that are highly resourced with programs for these student populations. So that's part of the reason that the Coalition app is more geared toward, first gen, low income, underrepresented populations of students. So just something to keep in mind there. But like Coach Dolly said, there are less partnerships available. So with the Common App, I mean, there's over 1,000 partner schools that utilize that app. So there's definitely quite a lot. With the Coalition app, there's only about 170. So definitely less of a partnership there, but more of a focus on providing resources to students who need it. And then we'll go here. So this section is all about the app components. So I think Coach Dolly alluded to this a little bit in the last slide, but for each of the applications, there's going to be the essay component. So if you're working through the Common App, you will have your personal statement. And much of the time too, for those schools you're applying to with the Common App, you'll have additional supplemental essays. So supplemental essays are just kind of additional essays that the college wants you to answer in the application process. And a lot of the time, these are just more essays to learn more about you, right? So they want to know why you want to get into a specific major, why you want to go to that school in particular, things like that. And so the best recommendation I have for supplementals is to really dig. And so when we're talking about an essay, like, why do you want to go here specifically? Really dig deep into that website and dig deep into the different things that you will benefit from that college specifically. So from supplemental to supplemental, you should not be able to copy and paste over from one school to the next because they're going to know that, oh, this student just copied and pasted this essay and changed this word to our college and slapped our name on it. So definitely want to make everything personalized for supplementals. And then for the UC application, there's also the UC PIQs, and those are the only essays for the UC application. So there are no, last minute supplementals or anything like that. In order to turn in the application, you just need those 4 PIQs and you're good to go. And then on the applications too, there are additional information sections. So these will be used for explaining, maybe you had a dip in grades your sophomore year because you had a family member pass away or you went through something else that really affected your academic performance. This would be the place to list that. So kind of giving context to your situation. There's also just a plain additional information section that doesn't have anything to do with academics. And so that might be somewhere where you put an activity that you didn't have room for on your activities list or something like that. That leads me to the activities list, which there's going to be, in the Common App, for example, there are 10 spaces for your activities, and you have to put these in order. So number one is your, most impactful, most important activity that you've done, and you kind of just go down the list. But say that you have 11 activities that have been really, really meaningful and important to you, you'll put that 11th one in the additional information section just so that they have that context from you. And so the essays, especially the personal statement, PIQs, and supplementals, are really a good chance, like I was talking about earlier, to show who you are beyond the numbers. So they're going to know what you did from your activities list. They're going to know the classes that you took from your transcripts, but they're not going to know why you did those things. And I think that that's really what helps set students apart in the application process is giving their context, their motivation, and what I like to call those invisible details. So even if the reader was standing next to you throughout the whole experience that you're talking about, the invisible details, they wouldn't know unless you explicitly told them. So with these essays, we want to make sure to be direct and let them know, if there's something important that's on your mind, tell them, don't dance around it, just tell it like it is. And then as part of our coaching program, we include something called the College Application Intensive and also an essay submission service. So the College Application Intensive this past year was a two event kind of program. And so the first event was really dedicated to getting the foundation started for those essays, especially those 5 core, the UC PIQs and the personal statement. And even if students aren't applying to the UCs, drafting out the UC PIQs is really helpful later when you're doing supplementals, because a lot of the time the topics are going to overlap. So even not knowing your supplementals and doing those UC PIQs in the first place, you're going to have good material written down no matter where you're applying. So that second event in the series is going to be dedicated to really getting, toward the final stages of your drafts. So making sure that, you have the foundation set from the first time, you've been working on them, and then you go to the second event and really get the finalized drafts down. And so in between there and after that, we also have an essay submission service where we'll, look at students' essays in an asynchronous kind of manner and then give feedback via comments, direct edits, or a video. So those are the things that we kind of offer students in that space. The next piece is going to be letters of recommendation. And so this is a big one with the Common Application. A lot of the time, each college is going to be a little bit different with what they require or recommend. So usually it's safe practice to include at least 2 teachers, both preferably from, 2 different subjects. So maybe a science subject and English. But the main thing is to pick teachers who know you best. So they should know you beyond the grade that you scored in their class, beyond, what kind of a student you are, and they should know you more as a person so that they can talk more to your character. And like I said, each school is going to have a little bit different recommender requirements or allowances. So having those 2 teachers is going to be a good baseline. And then you can include anybody else from there too that might be able to write a good letter for you. So that could be an advisor, that could be a previous supervisor, that could really be anybody who has, who you have this kind of relationship with, who can speak to your character. And then the last piece you're going to put in here is test scores. So obviously outside of your transcripts, you're going to put in your test scores. So standardized tests like the SAT and ACT. And some schools are going to have different policies around these. So some schools are going to be test blind, meaning they're not going to consider your SAT or your ACT scores in the application process. And the UC schools are one of those systems that is totally test blind. So there is nowhere on the UC application that you can submit test scores because they will not include them. There are also schools that are test optional. So with these, we recommend submitting scores that are within the 75th percentile of previously admitted students. So say that you're applying for a school and the 75th percentile score last year was a 1500. These are just examples. So it was a 1500 and say that you got a 1450. We would not recommend submitting a 1450 because it's not going to explicitly benefit you in the way that it would if your score was a little bit higher. And this is not a make or break, but just kind of some guidance as to when to submit. And there are also schools that are test required. And so these schools will put a little bit more emphasis on your standardized testing scores. So a lot of these schools are going to be Ivy League. And so for those schools, you really want to make sure that your test scores are within the previously admitted student range, because that's what's going to help you be competitive within that pool of students. The other type of test scores you may be submitting are AP or IB scores. And so these you don't have to submit unless you want to. So they're not something that's directly sent to the school or automatically done or anything like that. And there actually is a system where you can automatically send your scores for free. And I recommend not doing that because you don't know how you're going to do. So waiting until later helps you know, like, okay, yes, this is a score I want to send because it's passing. Or this isn't a score I want to send because it's not passing and it's not going to do anything to benefit me. So for all schools, I usually recommend submitting 3s and up. For top 20 Ivy League schools, 4s and 5s only. And then that way, you're kind of submitting your best foot forward for each type of school. But at the end of the day, AP scores, really the biggest thing that they do is decide whether or not you get college credit. So if you get a 2 on a test, it's not the end of the world as long as you did well in the class. So I hope that all makes sense. I know that was kind of a whirlwind, but like we said, there's time for questions afterwards. So please, feel free to keep those up your sleeve.
All right, and so similar to how there are so many different types of college applications, there are also different types of colleges. So here, these are some basic ones. For public versus private, a lot of the public universities, public colleges, these are funded partly by the state. So this often leads to lower tuition for in-state students. There might be a larger student body. Sometimes it's more competitive in state because it's there's a lot more students. And some examples of these universities would be UC Berkeley, University of Michigan. For private colleges or universities, these are funded mostly by tuition and endowments. So the tuition is going to be the same for all students. This results in often smaller classes. It does have some more individual attention, and they can offer generous financial aid if that makes them comparable in cost to that can help them make them comparable in cost to public schools. So don't just take out private schools if you feel that it's not because of the cost. They do tend to offer a lot of scholarships as well. And some examples for these private colleges, universities are Stanford. And then some considerations as well are the cost, the class size, and of course the campus culture as well. For community college and transfer pathways, this is a route it's been very popular. A lot more students have been doing this throughout the decades. So what this is, students do, they first start off at a community college, they'll get their associate's degree, they'll get a head start on all of their general education, and then they transfer into a 4-year institution. For some students, this might be the best way with flexibility, or there's also a lot of programs that help you do that transfer. One thing to take into consideration is that once you do go that route, it is a different application status, right? So you're not applying as a first-time college student or as a freshman. Now you will be transferring in as a transfer student. So that's one thing to take into consideration. And this can be great for saving money or straightening your academic record before transferring if your high school transcripts or high school career wasn't the best and had some hiccups. This could also be another path for students. And at the end of the day, diploma where you graduate from your four-year university, it's not going to say on there, oh, did a transfer and then came and graduated from here afterwards. That's not going to show on there at all. So that is not something to be afraid of. And we do also have a really good webinar. I'm actually going to drop it here on the chat that our Coach Angelique did. So if you're interested in more of that information, I went ahead and added that video here on the chat. Okay, so for liberal arts versus a large research university, for liberal arts colleges, these are going to be a lot more focused on undergraduate education. They're going to have smaller classes, that close interaction with professors. They are going to have an emphasis on a lot of broad-based learning and critical thinking. So you'll learn, across. And some examples of this is Pomona College, Williams College. For large research universities, these often tend to be big campuses, there's more students, there's a larger class size, and they have a lot of strong research opportunities. A lot of the times they might have a graduate programs as well, other resources, and they may have fewer required core classes. Some examples are like MIT, University of Chicago for these schools. Okay, and then for in-state versus out-of-state, this a lot does have to do with the tuition. Remember how I mentioned for public, they're funded by taxpayers. So for in-state public schools, you are going to tend to have lower tuition if you are a resident. You're going to be pretty familiar with the culture, have easier logistics. Maybe maybe go to the university that's a state college that's nearby. So you'll already know that environment. For out-of-state public schools, well, it is going to have higher tuition because it's going to be out-of-state tuition basically, and you are going to be experiencing a new region, maybe have new networking opportunities outside of your state. So everything offers a pros and cons. It just depends what you are looking for. And for private schools that are out of state, the tuition is going to be the same for in-state or out-of-state students. So for this, the factor matters a bit less for private out of states. Some considerations for there would be maybe the distance from home, whether you want to explore a new region, or if you feel comfortable staying in your bubble. For me personally, I did choose to leave, right? I was born and raised in San Jose, California. There's San Jose State University, but I had always gone to the campus for when I did, I don't know, some school trips. So I was very familiar with that campus, and I decided to go further out. Ended up going to Chico State. So it's a NorCal. Even though it's the same state, it does still have some sort of different environments, even the climate and different things. So even within the own state of California, since it's really big, you are able to see a lot of different things on there. But yeah, so these are the main differences or the types of different colleges that there are. And there are more than this, of course. There's also, if you're interested in like an all-women's college, that's also an point on there. So yeah, these are a couple of types of colleges that there are out there.
Terrific. Thank you. And one thing that we forgot to put on this slide, in case any of you are not familiar with the difference between a college and a university. So a college is just focused on undergraduate programs, and a university has focus on both undergraduate and graduate programs. So at a university, you would be able to get a master's, a doctorate, things like that. Just a college, they really focus on the undergraduate experience. So the bachelor's degrees, bachelor's of arts, bachelor's of science, that sort of a thing. So just a little point there that we forgot to put on this slide. And so our next point is about building a college list. And so we had said that we're going to come back to this because this is a big one. And so building a college list, there are a lot of factors involved. So in order to have good realistic balance, you want to pick target, reach, and safety schools. And so a reach school is a school that you might not necessarily meet all of the admissions criteria. So maybe you're a little below what they're looking for, but it'd be a great school for you to go to. You're really interested in going there. It seems like a great option. So why not throw your hat in the ring? So those are reach schools. Target schools are schools where you match the majority of the criteria. So, your standardized testing scores are right in line with previously admitted students. You have a lot of the different traits and things that they have on their admissions criteria. So these are schools that you have a pretty good chance of getting into just based off of your profile. And so these are target schools because you are the target student. And then there are safety schools also, and these schools are ones that you exceed the admissions criteria for. So you have test scores that are better, you have a GPA that's better, you have, more activity hours than, the typical admitted student. So these are schools that you have a really good chance of getting into. And so we like to suggest having a good balance between these because then you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? So looking for schools in each category that you're really interested in, I think is beneficial. And just kind of with, oh, I totally lost my train of thought. It's gone. We'll move on. So the next few things are going to be all about criteria. So some of the different things to consider are obviously academic programs. So whether or not that school has the program that you're looking for available as a major. Campus culture, so looking for class sizes, university size, activities, things like that that you're interested in doing. Those are things to look at, and also support systems, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. So a lot of colleges and universities will offer specific programs geared toward first generation students. When I was in my graduate program, I actually worked with a university program for students with experience in the foster care system. So there are a lot of great support programs out there. Just make sure you do your research if that's something that you are in need of or interested in pursuing. There are a couple platforms that can be useful in this. And so College Board's Big Future website is a good one for this. And then other school counseling platforms can also be helpful. So talking with your school counselor and seeing how knowledgeable they are with the schools, especially in your area, and just kind of what support programs they have in place. And then when it comes to actually building your college list, there are three things that you want to take into consideration. So the first is going to be your academics. And so by academics, I don't necessarily mean strictly your GPA. I mean your whole profile. So, how much you've challenged yourself with AP classes and in IB classes and potentially community college courses, depending on what your school's policy is on that. So your course rigor and how much you're challenging yourself is also a huge part of your academic profile. The other piece of academics is going to be your progression. So maybe you didn't have such a great time freshman year, but your sophomore year and junior year, you really picked it up. And so that's going to be another important factor because it shows that you might have had a hiccup, but you figured it out and you came back on top. So that's going to be another kind of piece that colleges are looking for as well. And when it comes to your activities, colleges are going to be looking at not just the number of activities, but the impact that you're making within those and the commitment that you're putting toward them. So how many hours per week you're putting toward your leadership opportunities. And even if you don't have a designated leadership position, they want to know what the impact is that you made on the organization. They want to make sure that you're not just kind of a passive member who goes to meetings and doesn't do much else. So those are the two big factors. And then the third one is going to be your application itself. So the big thing in your application is going to be those essays. So, you've done the academic piece, you've done the activities piece. Now we need to know the background and the context behind it. So those are all things to take into consideration when building a college list. And so let's move on here to our next piece, which is kind of planning out your application process.
Yes, so for dates, planning, and tracking, of course, you want to first know which schools are you going to apply to regular decision, early action, if you're deciding on early decision, and what does all of this mean? So let me break it down. For early action, what this means, this is a non-binding. This is just simply you get to apply early. They get to tell you if you're in, you're not, you're deferred. They tell you, and you still have the exact same amount of time as everybody else to make your decision. For early decision, this is a binding. So for early decision, you can only do this for one school because this is a commitment, right? You're saying if I get accepted to this university, there's no other answer, but I'm for sure going to attend this university. So early decision is only going to be for one specific university that you are for sure know if you got admitted, you will go there. For restrictive early action, this was not as commonly heard of, or a lot of people know about early action, early decision, but restrictive early action is a combination of both. It is still non-binding, so it's on the early action side where it's not a legal commitment. It just means that certain universities are going to restrict where you apply for early action. So restrictive early action is going to be mostly for those universities that are, and you want to make sure when you're looking into this process, you see if a specific school has restrictive early action, read what their requirements are, because you don't want to be in a situation where you didn't really do your research and you're applying to everywhere. And now because you applied to a school that was in that list of not being able to apply for the restricted action, now you're in a situation you don't want to be in. So that's what thing you want to make sure you review for restrictive early action. And regular decision is just regular, right? The same thing, not the same thing, sorry, just a regular decision, the one that everybody knows about, the most common one. This one gives you more time to, of course, perfect your application because it's at a later time frame. So the way you want to plan things are any early action schools that you're applying to, really focus on the supplemental essays. If you're doing it through the Common App, really look at what are the requirements they have. One thing you want to take into consideration as well is the SAT scores. If that school is going to require your SAT scores, make sure you are taking the latest SAT before that early action date, before the deadline to submit any SAT scores. So it really depends on what you're looking for, right? So there are a lot of students that know, oh, these are for sure the schools I want to apply to, and then they know off the bat that these are going to be schools they're excited for, so they can maybe apply early action. One thing too that you want to take into consideration is they have different deadlines, right? So with us internally in our program, we have even additional internal deadlines. And this is because we want to make sure that if you're applying for early action, you're really ready and set. So with our students, if once they determine they want to do early action or regular decision, we really do emphasize being, it's all set, because you don't want to be last minute submitting your application, being ready, and then you forgot to fill out your Common App, and now you see you have 5 other supplemental essays. So you really want to plan accordingly. What you can do, things to keep yourself on track, are having these organization and tracking spreadsheets. You can look into looking at the deadlines for each specific early action, the early decision, the regular decision with specific dates. And also you want to know which application platform you're using, right? Going back to how many different platforms there might be different deadlines. So you just want to make sure you're reading everything for that specific university, for that specific platform, and keep notes of it somewhere, whether it's an Excel sheet, a Google sheet, somewhere, so you could easily check and have all of your information in one place. You also, of course, want to prep your required materials, which are the essays, your letters of recommendation. You don't want to be asking for them a month before you're going to do your applications. You got to give your teachers enough time. And of course, with the SAT, similar to how I mentioned earlier, you don't want to be juggling your last SAT date before a certain a date that can be in between those dates of early action submissions. So these are some reminders. You can also set yourself some reminders, some check-ins. And one thing I would recommend as well, a lot of universities have webinars where they start kind of telling students, guiding them. You can go and attend those webinars. A lot of the times you might even be able to ask directly a question for, the College of Business, or you can even maybe request a waiver, of application waiver. It doesn't hurt, right? Like all the worst thing they can say is no. I did attend one time a webinar, or like I think it was for a specific like program that they had, and they had told us, oh, anyone that's in this webinar, just email us and you will get your application waiver feed. I was like, oh, that was awesome. So don't be afraid to join those webinars, see what kind of information you can get from there. So congrats with everyone that's here today too. You really are making that effort on learning more about everything and like prepping yourself, because for all of those students that are class of 2026, you might feel overwhelmed, like it's around the corner. And yes, it is around the corner. So start acting now, but of course, taking it with, don't be rushed, because if you're rushed, you can maybe affect your applications, but do keep in mind that there are these different options for you: early action, early decision, restrictive early action, and regular decision. All right, thank you. Now, Kristen, go ahead. Oh, I forgot about this. So we do have a college list brainstorm document. So for everybody that's in here, if you all text us college list to 949-775-0865, we will go ahead and share a document that is going to give you an idea to brainstorm those specific colleges. And we are going to have the number at the end of the slide as well. So if you're not able to write the number down, we will have the number again at the end.
Awesome. And I'll just leave this up for a couple more seconds just so that you have some time and don't feel rushed writing it down. One other thing I'll include too with early decision is that early decision, a lot of the time you're making a commitment before you know anything about your financial aid details. So it's essentially committing to a school before you know anything about it. So for that reason, I'm very careful with telling students, when to do an early decision, just because it has to be something that you are absolutely sure of no matter what. So it has to be a school that above all else, I will go here, finances don't matter, that sort of information. And please keep in mind too that it's not a requirement to have an early decision school. So if you want to, you can apply to all of your school's regular decision. If you want to, you can apply all early action. There's no recommended or required number of each types of applications. So it's just what works best for you, right? And so the big benefits of doing early action are just that you get it out of the way sooner and you get to know sooner. But if you need more time, if you don't feel like you're prepared, wait until regular decision. And it's the benefit of having more time to work on your application and feel confident in the material is going to far outweigh any benefits of early action. So just a couple things to keep in mind there. And so I am going to go on to the next slide, but like Coach Dolly said, we will have the number on our last slide. So don't worry if you haven't had time to write it down.
And to help
Um,
on that, sorry, I forgot to mention the estimate time of when you will hear back from any early action, decision. It's going to be typically in December. So if you're planning ahead, just know that typically around December, that's when those results will come out. So that's something important to note on there. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of nice too to know because that December when you'll be finding out is typically when regular decision applications start to be coming due. So potentially if you apply early action, you might even know before, people in your friend group have even applied. So could be a cool thing, but like I said, if you're not confident, don't do it. Leave yourself some extra time, take the time that you need, feel confident in what you're sending out. And so the next piece is going to be just a little bit more about resources and support systems. So a really great resource when you're filling out your application is going to be your school counselor. So this person is going to know your graduation requirements, your graduation policies, class policies, information about your transcripts, front to back. So when you're filling out your application, especially in the sections where you have to update your academic history, your school counselor is going to be a great person to verify this information. So definitely, take your application into them, ask if you can sit down for 15 minutes and just verify that you have everything entered correctly. The next piece is going to be community programs. So a couple of examples of these are TRIO and Upward Bound. So TRIO as an example, this is a program that primarily supports low-income individuals, first-generation students, and students with disabilities. They offer a variety of service like academic advising, tutoring, financial aid assistance, career exploration, and even transfer support. So this could be a great opportunity for you to look in your area and see if there's anything like this available. And then the next thing is some campus resources to look for, kind of like we were talking about earlier with your criteria. So a lot of campuses are going to have first generation clubs, mentorship programs, academic advising, mentorship. I already said mentorship. It means a lot to me. I want you to know. And so these are going to be really important things on your college journey just to kind of help you stick with the process. I have found in my experience working at colleges and universities that the students who tend to do the best are the ones who feel supported and in a sense of belonging. And so having these programs and having a community of people around you who kind of understand what you're going through and understand the questions that you have is going to make you feel way more comfortable, way more confident. So highly, highly recommend finding these services.
And to hop on that too, a lot of the times people think, oh, the first gen office, it's going to be boring. No, there's times where they might even set up study times where students can just come in and talk, or it could just be a time where you go and meet up with other first gen students. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I'm going in there to do a program or I'm going in there for tutoring. Like it's very open. And a lot of the times too, they even ask students like, oh, what would you like us to do in our office more often or do? And so definitely taking advantage of going into those offices, those spaces, and finding that community so you can feel belong, like which Kristen mentioned. So, which will lead to a better success. Of course, the important thing is getting there, but the best thing to do is get there and graduate as well with all those resources and supports that they have. And outside of just first gen things, they even have a lot of universities have, for example, we had a wildcat pantry, and this was a where students could go in, they don't have to pay. They could just get their own groceries. It was food from the community, farmers that would donate their produce. So definitely be open to all of those resources that the universities and colleges have outside of just first gen. That's one, of course, very important one, but also expand into any other resources that they have. And don't wait till college or university, right? Even in your high school, check in and see what's available for your resources right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tag on to that too. When I was in college, I actually worked with the first gen program. So I was helping students who were kind of coming into the college as first generation students. And so I will say, from my perspective, I did not think our program was boring. I thought it was a lot of fun. Um, I'm biased, but we did take a lot of feedback from students to find out what they really wanted in a program, how they would benefit, things like that. So, really trying to use student experience to inform our practice. And so, basically, the college application process is hard. Being a first generation student adds a totally new layer onto that, but you've got this. There are resources in the community, there are resources at your school, things like that, that take advantage of it because those services are there to help you. And so, regardless of what you've got going on, talk to people about it, seek out help, and you'll get there and you'll do just fine.
And there's tons of information out there as well, right? Another really good resource I recommend is if you haven't seen our YouTube channel, we have tons of free resources on there that you can go and learn about. For example, like I mentioned earlier, there was just a webinar on engineering students specifically. So that should be coming out in the next 24 hours or so. But utilize all your resources. And we did want to save a couple of minutes for any questions. I did see some questions coming in on the chat, which we answered, but I don't know if anybody else has any additional questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or type in them here on the chat.
Yeah, and we have the Q&A function that you can use, and we also have the chat function you can use. Super open to either, but I'm not going to put anybody on the spot and, call on you or anything like that. But if you do want to know anything, or if you do have questions or concerns, please share. Like I said, this is why resources like this are here. We want to help you and we want to make sure that you have access to things. So ask away if you need anything, and if you don't, that's okay too. Okay, so we have a question here. What percentage of students you see consider as a transfer from community college? So I'm thinking that this question is, what is the percentage of transfer students who go to a UC? And so I'll tell you, it's going to be different every year, right? And so I think the population of transfer students is going up in recent years just because of the cost of the traditional four-year college and university also going up. So community college is a great way to try to save a little money and to also get your more generalized courses out of the way. And programs like the UCs also have the transfer guarantees. So if you look up a potential UC that you want to go to with a specific program, they have a transfer guarantees program that if you meet all of the requirements, you're actually guaranteed a spot in that program at that institution. So that is definitely something to look up in terms of the UC system. I think it's a great kind of incentive for students to take the community college route and still feel confident that they're going to go somewhere really great afterwards. So great question.
Yes, for the UCs, it's roughly around 32% of graduates that came in. So like around one of every three UC students started off at the community college route. And there are specifically within California and UC system, there are resources as well if you're planning to do the transfer. There's the TAP, which is like a transfer application process that they help you out with. It's a portal with that the UC system utilizes. So those are other things that you can use as resources as well. Regardless if you're first gen or not first gen, those are out there as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I know there was someone that had asked an important question in case anybody else hasn't seen the chat, but they asked about what about step parents, right? If a step parent has a university degree, would that disqualify them as first gen? So for first gen, the student status is determined only by the education level of the student's biological or adoptive parent, not necessarily by the step parent or the legal guardian. So one thing to consider if anybody else had that question.
Yeah, and building off of that too, there was also another question in here about some parents who went to school outside of the United States. And typically speaking, first generation applies to students who are the first in their family to go to school at a United States institution. So if you went to school in the UK, let's say, and family moved here, student is going to a school in the US, they would technically be first generation if the other parent did not go here as well. So just something to keep in mind. And the reason being, and I think we alluded to this in the question, is that the systems are totally different. So navigating the system in the US is going to be totally different from navigating the system anywhere else. All right, another question here. If your summer community college grade is low, are you required to still submit it for applications to UCs or other colleges? If not, how can you show improvement to be considered for college applications? So this is a great question. And so I'll take this, and Coach Dolly, if you have anything to add on, feel free. So if you are taking a course at a community college and your grade is lower than you anticipated, if that is the only course that you've taken at an institution, you don't have to report it because there's nothing else attached to it. It's basically just one class that you've taken at an institution. And if you don't report it, you don't have to. That being said, if you've taken any other courses at that institution, you can't pick and choose what comes on your transcript, right? So if you have a grade that comes out and you don't want to report it, that means you have to forego all the rest of the classes that you've taken at that institution as well. So kind of a picking and choosing your battles kind of situation. That being said, if your grade is not passing, you are always free to retake that course. So that's an option there. But if you do have a passing grade, a lot of the time, community colleges don't have pathways for retaking if you passed. So one of the best things to do is just, if you have an explanation for why you didn't do so well in that class, that's something that can go in the additional information section. And if you don't have anything that was really happening, just continuing to do well on your other courses, I think speaks for itself. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but my time in high school, my time in dual enrollment classes wasn't perfect, and I definitely had some hiccups here and there, but as long as you're continuing that trajectory, then that's okay. And then so high school said that it has to be reported compulsorily. And so that might be the case if the community college course shows up on your high school transcript. And in some cases that will happen. So if your high school has a situation with the community college that you're working with, and that community college shows up on your high school transcript, that is something that will have to be reported just because it's showing up on that transcript and you can't pick and choose what's on there. But if you're taking the class at the community college and it's not on your high school transcript, and the only place it's going to show up is on that community college transcript, and it's the only one on there, you don't have to report that. So I hope that kind of helps add some clarity to that too. And Coach Dolly, did you have anything to add on to that?
Just in the worst case scenario that let's say you do have to show that bad grade, also what is bad, right? Is it an F? Is it a C? Is it a B plus or an A minus? So that's one thing to take into consideration. But also one low community college grade is not going to ruin your university's acceptance, right? Like what's going to matter is the overall record. So the universities look at your applications holistically. So not just that summer class. And of course, during your additional comments or personal statements, you can always address the situation. Maybe during that summer, you were taking care of your grandparents and now you had to dedicate, 90% of your time with them rather than being able to take that summer course. So you can always explain the situation and don't let that one little hiccup discourage you from applying or continuing to do more future summer courses. What matters most is that you demonstrated that growth and that resilience afterward, right? So if you can show them the next summer you got an A in those summer classes that you took, then that's going to give you some bonus points on there.
Yeah. And in terms of rigor, too, a community college class is seen as the equivalent of an AP class or something like that. So if you think about it, an A in a regular class is going to be the same as a B in an AP class when it comes to your GPA. And so, kind of the same thing that goes with the college course, too. I mean, this is a harder level course. Taking the course in general shows the colleges that you are up for the challenge of taking that and ready to pursue college level courses. So, sometimes the added rigor in your schedule will outweigh, especially a B, even a C sometimes. So definitely not the end of the world. Okay, so we are winding down and I don't see anything else in our Q&A or chat. So I'm going to wrap things up here, but like we said, feel free to text this number if you have questions. Text college list if you want that list of criteria to look for when you're developing your list. And have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week. And I'm so grateful that we got to spend our evening with you here. And yeah,
Yeah, thank you all for joining. Definitely taking those steps, those parents, students, regardless, taking a step towards your college admission success. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Bye.